Hi, I'm Dr. Derek Lester, founder of Brainstrong. I have a PhD in education. Today, I'm going to answer some questions about learning and some language-based learning disabilities such as dyslexia.
All right, we're going to start off with our first question. So, for those who may be new to the topic, how would you define dyslexia?
Dyslexia is a language-based learning disability that makes reading and comprehension slow and effortful. So essentially, a dyslexic, when they're reading, they have to solve each word like it's a puzzle piece, as compared to the typical mind can look at a word and recognize it just as quickly as the typical mind can recognize a face.
What are some of the biggest misconceptions people have about dyslexia?
There are two major misconceptions that I hear often. One is that somebody will outgrow it. As a child, kindergarten, first grade, second grade, they're learning to read, they're a little bit behind, they're identified as dyslexic, and then they learn how to read. And so a lot of people will think, oh, well, then they just outgrew dyslexia, which applies to learning how to read. But in fact, dyslexia, it's a lifelong learning disability because it's how the brain processes words. It's slower and noisier for the dyslexic brain. And that isn't something that anybody outgrows. And then another misconception I'll hear is that dyslexia or someone with dyslexia will read a word backwards or that the words will be flipped. And that's not true. Dyslexia is like when it's looking at a word, it has to break apart the individual pieces. And if a mind is rushed, or it's under stress, or it's a word that it doesn't know, somebody could then misread it or misspell it because the brain isn't processing it as a typical brain would. So words aren't flipped or put backwards; they're just not read as they're spelled out.
All right, so the next question is something that has been talked about for a long time, but we wanted to get your opinion on this. So, is IQ something we're born with, or can it change over time?
IQ, first as a definition, it's essentially how much information someone knows and then how quickly their brain can retrieve it and apply it to certain situations or certain questions. Because intelligence deals with how quickly someone can learn, how well they can focus, how well information can be learned and stored, and then connections made between and amongst all these pieces of information, then how quickly that information can be retrieved and applied. Some people are born more gifted than others. So people can work on raising the IQ a little bit, but there are some upper thresholds just based upon someone's genetics. However, the biggest factor that goes into IQ are those factors that limit it. For example, if a child grows up in a stressful environment, or if they're chronically ill or malnourished, or even a low stimulus environment, that can negatively influence IQ because the brain structures that are growing, that help learning, they won't be as robust. The structures won't be as strong because under stress, the physical body doesn't grow as well, and the brain is the same. So that's a big factor that can actually lower a person's IQ.
Our next question is: in what ways do learning environment and practice play a role in a child's cognitive growth?
Learning environments influence the sociology of learning and also child's psychology of learning. So if a child is in an environment that encourages and praises hard work and dedication and lots of practice mastering a specific skill, that's the type of environment that encourages individual students to excel in a skill and to master it. And if a child is in that social environment, the child will then learn on a personal level, learn within their own child's psychology that if I focus on one skill at a time and I practice it again and again until I master it, then I can learn anything. So the social environment, if it's supportive and encouraging, will then instill within the child that they can learn and they can get better at something if they practice and if they focus.
Going more towards a science direction, what does modern research say about the brain's ability to learn?
Oh, yeah, we know how the brain learns. And the brain learns the same for everybody, regardless of age. And the human brain learns best when someone's in a quiet, distraction-free environment. Ideally, there's a big window and it's looking out to a green grass field or a green forest. And the person is trying to learn one piece of information or one concept at a time. And they sit there and they focus on it until they've started to memorize it. So that's how the brain learns best.
And a follow-up question to that. So what about the brain's ability to adapt?
Oh, right. That idea of adaptation, it's really, adaptation is just learning new skills. Oftentimes the word neuroplasticity is used at how, children have neuroplasticity and it's like adults don't, but that's not true. Neuroplasticity just applies to the idea of learning a new skill, applying that and integrating that in with the information that their brain currently has. So everybody, assuming normal brain functioning, can learn across their lifespan to learn new information.
I know we briefly touched on not being able to outgrow learning disabilities like dyslexia, but could you explain a little more as to why that is?
The brain never outgrows dyslexia because it's a structural issue within the physical mechanics of the brain itself. So the parts that see a word, recognize it, understand its meaning, those parts in the brain function differently. And so it's slower, it's noisier processing words than the typical brain. And that's something that somebody never outgrows.
What does improvement actually look like for someone with dyslexia?
So improvement means being taught specific skills to break down individual words and sentences. So instead of the typical brain just looking at words in a sentence and understand their meaning, the dyslexic learns to break down individual words. So they learn various specific strategies. One of the benefits to this is a lot of dyslexics then learn a really strong work ethic because they learn that in order to learn any new information, they have to put in a lot of effort and time. So they just develop this skill of, well, I'm doing something, so I have to put in a lot of effort, which then pays off later in life when they have to go out and get a job and make a living.
What signs should parents look for if they're concerned that their child might have dyslexia?
Yeah, so if their child is learning to read slower than their like older brothers or sisters or their peers in their class, that could be a potential sign. So if you have a kindergartner or first grader and they're a little behind in class, that's worth having a conversation with your teacher. Or if your child is avoiding reading or writing, that could be a sign as well that there's some difficulty or potentially some embarrassment on their part about their performance. So again, that's worth having a conversation with their teacher.
What can parents do if they think their child has dyslexia or some other language-based learning disability?
Oh, a great resource will be the school that they're enrolled in asked to talk with their reading specialist for assessments, or you could also reach out to psychologists that specialize in identifying students' learning disabilities and have them independently tested.
What is the biggest mistake parents make when supporting their child who's struggling with reading?
One of the biggest mistakes is parents can unintentionally pressure their children to learn. It's best that the parents understand the rate at which a child can learn and how much that they can learn within a day. So if a child has dyslexia, their mind is going to be taxed faster when it's reading than the typical mind. So there's only so much information, so much effort they can put in per day. How parents can feel more at ease and put less pressure on their child is talk with their teacher, talk with an educator to get a clear, direct, and simple plan to get them caught up. And then just work on learning that information, a couple minutes a day or longer periods a couple times a week. Just try to be like as happy and supportive and encouraging of their child. Once you have a specific plan, resting and at ease, knowing that if you apply the plan, your child should get caught up.
With your PhD in education and over 30 years of experience working with children, I'm sure a lot of parents have, come to you for advice and about what resources you'd recommend. So what are some of the resources that you often recommend to parents?
So for resources, I encourage parents to look for simple and direct material that teaches one concept at a time, whether it's like one concept on a flashcard or just one concept like on a workbook page. So like at Brainstrong, we make flashcards to help students learn their ABCs and then to learn phonics and then sight words. There's some other materials which these are not paid endorsements, but Bob books are a great reading start. I love those. And then also Spectrum, like Spectrum Math and Spectrum Reading books. They're broken down by grade, and those are great resources that just teach one concept at a time. Those are some good sources. Brainstrong for flashcards, Bob books for reading, and then Spectrum reading and math for students as they get older.
Thank you so much for your time, Derek. It was really great having you here. We have one last question for you before we end this interview. If a parent is feeling worried or overwhelmed right now, what message would you want to leave them with?
Encouragement I'd give parents is trust the process. If you talk with the teacher and you've gotten a clear, direct, simple plan to get them caught up, whether it's in reading or math, stick with that a couple minutes a day or some longer sessions a couple times a week. You should see progress. So I've taught hundreds of students over my career, and with a simple, direct plan, very specific goals, you see the students grow. It's slow, but if you're steady and consistent with it, slow progress will add up quickly over time. This segment is brought to you by Brainstrong. If you're a parent who wants to teach your child how to read but don't know where to start, Brainstrong makes it simple. So our flashcards are designed to break reading down into clear, manageable steps that actually make sense for kids and parents. You don't need hours a day, complicated apps, or formal teaching experience. Just give a few minutes a day, guided by a simple, direct system that builds real reading confidence. Find our flashcards at brainstrong.org or on Amazon.